At age 3, Haley Moss was diagnosed with autism. As a child, she would cry and she would scream and she struggled to communicate. By age 4, with specialized therapy, she finally began to speak. Thanks to early intervention and the support of her parents, Haley says she never saw her autism as a negative, but as something to be celebrated. Now, in her early 20s, Haley is an author, she's an artist, a public speaker, and Florida's first known openly autistic attorney. Earlier, I spoke to Haley about her journey and her mission to give hope to others living on the spectrum. Hi, Haley. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, especially in these interesting circumstances with coronavirus, and we're all interacting with each other more and more on Zoom. So it's great to have you joining our program.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about the term openly autistic. That's something that is often used before your name. Openly autistic lawyer Haley Moss. Talk about what that means to you.
Absolutely. So to me, being openly autistic is both a celebration and freedom. So a lot of people might not disclose that they have a disability or that they're autistic because there's a fear of stigma and discrimination and just how society views people on the spectrum. So to be open and not be afraid to show who I am and show up as my full self is bold in its own way. And it really does give me the freedom to be myself. And I'm proud to be who I am.
One of the things that's also used to describe you is that you were nonverbal and then you became a lawyer. So there's a lot that happened in between that time. Sort of talk us through what that was like for you as a child and learning that you had autism.
So I don't really remember being a really little kid. I mean, a lot of us don't remember being maybe like 3 or 4 years old, but I do know that I cried and screamed a lot as my only means of communication because I wasn't speaking with my mouth. And I was 3 years old when I was diagnosed with autism. I found out that I was autistic when I was 9 years old. My parents compared it a lot to being like Harry Potter. I was obsessed with Harry Potter books and the movies at the time. And my mom explained it like having magical powers. And we focused on the strengths because every child knows the things that are hard for them or that they're not as great at. So we focused on things that I was really good at or the things that I enjoyed. So I was really passionate about the things that interested me. I was a really creative artist. I loved to write. I was always a good listener. I was really sensitive. So we focused on the things that were good and focused on the strengths. And that was kind of the foundation for self-acceptance that I had growing up.
That's beautiful. That's so important for parents to hear, is focusing on the things that your child is good at. And that's such a positive. Talk about what some of the obstacles, though, have been. I know when you and I have spoken before, you said school wasn't a problem. You did really well in school academically. But what were some of the other obstacles that you had to overcome?
A lot of the things that have been hard for me throughout my entire life have been making and keeping friends. So I think social cues aren't natural to me. So things that most people think are common sense socially aren't common sense to me. That's the best way to explain it. And there's also a very different form of communication that neurotypical people seem to use. So even when it's like, oh, I like your shirt, and you just say thank you, I realize, oh, but how do I keep that conversation going? How do I make this into a friendship, or how do I have a meaningful conversation out of this, for instance? So little tiny things you might not think about. I also struggle a lot with like independent living skills. So things like cleaning my apartment or doing my laundry, but it's not that I don't want to do it. It's that sometimes it's a lot to sort through all the different cleaners or all the different steps to get it done. And it just feels very overwhelming. So things like that I struggle with. And I also struggle with how society perceives people with disabilities and autism particularly. So sometimes society is more disabling than any label itself can be because people have their prejudices, their attitudes, their stereotypes of who you should be or who they think you are. So that can be a lot harder to overcome than anything else. And that's why I do what I do and try to educate people whenever I have the chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, the majority of young adults on the autism spectrum are unemployed. It's hard for them to find work. You are a working attorney. Talk about how that problem continues to persist, where these young people don't have the opportunity to find jobs, and how we can change all of that. How do we talk to the business community about hiring people on the autism spectrum?
I think the business community needs to follow the lead of focusing on strengths. So we all benefit from working with people who are different than us and moving away from the perceived weaknesses. So there's things that we are taught that are signs that people might not be trustworthy, such as not making eye contact. While for someone on the spectrum, not making eye contact is just a way that they feel comfortable interacting with the world, that it could be physically uncomfortable to look at someone. It's not that you can't trust them. So here's the thing, we all benefit from working with people who are different than us to solve the problems of both today and tomorrow, that we need to understand the value of that. And the problem that I notice a lot is a lot of people are afraid of something they don't know. They're afraid to work with people with disabilities generally because they just don't know what to expect. They're afraid that it might be something different. And once we get past that fear of accommodation or working with something different, great things happen. So accommodations usually aren't expensive. It's usually free or under $500. So it really is a very small investment to be able to have the benefit of working with different kinds of people.
And quickly, you've often used the term neurodiversity. What do you mean by that?
Neurodiversity is the idea that there are different brains out there. So there's different kinds of ways to function and different brain profiles. So we all are neurodiverse from one another, but people who are neurodivergent or a neurodiverse society also includes people who have autism, who have ADHD, Tourette's syndrome, intellectual disabilities, certain psychiatric disabilities as well. So it's really important to understand that we do need all kinds of minds and not just people on the spectrum as different brains.
Yeah. Haley Moss, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.